The biggest story in college football is what we saw from Mike Leach in Mississippi State in his very first game, coaching in the SEC against the defending national champions on the road. I mean, the numbers are truly mind-boggling for what we saw from Mike Leach's offense. In his first ever game as a head coach in the SEC, Mike Leach's quarterback, KJ Costello, threw for 625 yards and 5 touchdowns against the defending national champs. Once again, 625 yards and 5 touchdowns against the defending national champs. The most passing yards ever in the history of the conference against the defending national champions. I don't think that could be, understated. Like, Mike Leach proved in one game that his offense works in the SEC. I mean, let's also factor in just how unusual the offseason was for any first-year head coach at a program. And Leach, in his first game, has his quarterback throw for 625 yards. And I get it. LSU is not the same team they were a year ago. But did anyone expect that in game one? Of course not. LSU was still a 14-point favorite in that game. I know it because I bet them. And I lost money because Mike Leach's offense was absolutely ridiculous. Great coaching, though, is great coaching. And there's been that argument for years. Oh, would Mike Leach work in the SEC if he had better resources and a chance to recruit better players? Would it work? And the answer is yes, resoundingly yes. Great coaching is great coaching. Mike Leach is a phenomenal coach. And honestly, if I'm an NFL team, I'm calling Mike Leach and I'm asking if he has any interest in taking a head coaching job. If I have a young quarterback and you want to try and make that young quarterback better, the young offensive mind that you're looking for doesn't have to be a young guy. It could be a guy that's been doing it year after year after year at a variety of different programs. And that guy's Mike Leach. Think about it. Some of Mike Leach's underlings are already in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury, look what he's doing with Kyler Murray. Cliff Kingsbury's mentor was Mike Leach. Great coaching is great coaching. Mike Leach is proving that he obviously could coach at an elite level, but that he can coach in the SEC, the sport's greatest conference. I just thought that was mind-boggling and something that needs to be talked about. I mean, first game at a brand new program on the road against the defending national champions, and his quarterback throws 5 touchdowns and 625 yards. I mean, unbelievable. If I'm an NFL team, I'd consider hiring Mike Leach in a second. I get that he's quirky, he's unusual, he's kind of erratic, but the guy produces. Isn't that what we want? Bill Belichick's an oddball. Who cares? He wins. If I'm a team, I'm hiring Leach. It's so funny. I watch Adam Gase, and he's an absolute disgrace. He is he conned 2 NFL teams into hiring him on this idea that he's this quarterback whisperer. He's nowhere close to that. A quarterback whisperer is Mike Leach. Look what Gardner Minshew's doing in the NFL. That's a Mike Leach guy. Look at all these guys that come from Mike Leach's offense. If I'm an NFL team, I'd be calling up Mike Leach in a second. But now he's in a great spot at Mississippi State. And the Bulldogs are set up quite nicely. If you look at the upcoming schedule, they could beat Arkansas, probably beat Kentucky as well. If they do that, they'd be 3-0 with Texas A&M at home. Win that one, and Mike Leach has a chance to roll into Alabama, roll into Tuscaloosa, and play probably an undefeated Alabama team. Halloween weekend. I mean, you talk about drama. How about Mike Leach and Mississippi State going into Bama and Nick Saban's defense against Mike Leach's offense? The greatest defensive mind in college football against the greatest offensive mind in college football. Looking down the line, that is something that could actually happen. Let's hear from Mr. Mike Leach. This was Leach on scheduling LSU for the opening game of the season.
We played LSU because, New England, Green Bay, and the Chiefs had somebody scheduled, so we played these guys. But I'm really proud of our guys.
I mean, he is just an awesome guy to root for. He really is. He's highly entertaining. He produces. And you're always going to get a soundbite from Mike Leach. And I saw yesterday, Mississippi State put out like a hype video being like, if you want to get on the bandwagon, now's your chance. And it's like a pirate ship bandwagon. Oh, man. How great would it be if Mike Leach dressed up as a pirate in his matchup against Saban in Alabama in a couple weeks? Halloween weekend. Just unreal. So I just want to give credit to Mike Leach, give some love to him, because, I mean, it cannot be talked about enough what he did. I mean, in one game, to produce that type of offense and just end the argument as to whether or not his style of offense would work in the greatest conference in college football. I mean, the argument's done. It's over. It works. KJ Costello came in and threw for 625 yards and 5 touchdowns against LSU on the road. Period. The argument's dead. Mike Leach can flat out coach. And if I'm an NFL team, I'm calling Mike Leach. I am. You know, I've had to watch Adam Gase coach my football team the last 2 years. He is a horrendous coach, horrendous play caller, horrendous offensive innovator. Honestly, even putting the word innovator and Adam Gase in the same sentence is insulting to everyone's intelligence. Mike Leach, though, now that guy is an offensive mind, an offensive genius. I'd call that guy in a second if I was an NFL owner and I need to hire an offensive coach. Now, the other big SEC storyline from the weekend is what Florida quarterback Kyle Trask did in his opening game. Tony Desiri, a big Florida fan, I'm sure he loved seeing this on the morning show. Kyle Trask looked like Joe Burrow in his debut game last year. You know, Joe Burrow was kind of this good player, but we really didn't know what to expect. And obviously he ascended to being the first pick in the draft, winning the Heisman, maybe the greatest college football season we've seen from a quarterback. But Joe Burrow started off his conference play with 5 touchdown passes, I believe, against Vanderbilt last year. That's how Joe Burrow really got started. Kyle Trask started off his campaign to be this year's version of Joe Burrow by throwing for 416 yards and 6 touchdowns against Ole Miss in Florida's 20-point win. I think Florida put up 51 points over Ole Miss. Now, I don't know if Kyle Trask is going to play himself into the first overall pick like Joe Burrow did, especially with Trevor Lawrence sitting there and Justin Fields. But Trask could play himself into being a first-round pick. We always see someone do it. A couple of years ago, it was Baker Mayfield going from a mid-round pick to the first pick in the draft. Last year, Burrow was a late-round pick to the first pick in the draft. So expecting Trask to do that, probably unfair. But another year in Dan Mullen's offense, and you understand why a lot of people made the Burrow comparison with Trask. He's an experienced quarterback. Florida returns a lot of its starters. And you look at their biggest threat in their division in the SEC, Georgia. Georgia was trailing 7-5 at halftime against Arkansas. I watched a lot of that game. Georgia looked horrible. They do not have a quarterback. We'll talk to our guy Hudson Mason, former Georgia quarterback, on Thursday about that game. But my goodness, Hudson should see if he has any eligibility left and go back and play for Georgia, because they really struggled at the quarterback spot. Even though they made the change at halftime, they brought in the other quarterback and they blew him out in the second half. That first half was ugly for Georgia, really ugly. And you almost had a scenario where you had, not one, but 2 teams ranked in the top 4 go down in the opening weekend. Obviously, Kansas State with the massive upset over number 3 Oklahoma, but Georgia, number 4 in the nation, trailed 7-5 at the half. So those were some of the big takeaways from the college football weekend that was. We'll get more into the college football storylines throughout the week, and as I mentioned, Hudson Mason joins us in his weekly spot on Thursday. We'll break the SEC down with him and much more. 800-224-2004. A whole lot still to dive into here on the show. We're coming right back. It is the Jake Asman Show. We're with you on a Tuesday morning on the Sports Map Radio Network.